If you're interested in seasonal colors or color analysis, you probably know that the 12 season system is the most popular, or at least the most widely known system that's being used today by many color analysts. And today's video is for those of you that have been typed before, or even self-diagnose yourselves into one of these 12 seasons because it's the closest match. But you were still left scratching your head a little bit because the season you were typed as doesn't quite align with how you feel about what your best colors are. So today, I'll be explaining the 16 season system of color analysis with the specific focus on the 4th additional categories in each of the seasons that are especially nuanced and a little bit different from how we traditionally view seasonal colors. If you've been wandering across the different seasons because you just couldn't quite nail down what your exact palette is, I highly recommend you to watch this video until the end. I think for a lot of you, there could be that aha moment that clicks in your brain as I explain the specific nuances of these additional categories of seasons. Okay, so I'm actually going to break this topic into 2 parts. Today I'm going to focus on the warm seasons, spring and autumn, to talk about the 4th categories within these seasons, soft spring and light autumn. In part 2 of the series, I'll go over the cool seasons, summer and winter, to explain the differences in their 4th categories, deep summer and soft winter. Now, if you have some prior knowledge about the seasonal colors, you probably know that it initially started off with just the 4 seasons, and then over time those seasons were further segregated into 8, then 12. And today not only are there 8, 12, and 16 categories that divide each of the 4 seasons into smaller segments, there's also systems that use 20 categories and 24 categories. So essentially what's happening is that we're just breaking up the seasons into smaller and smaller segments based on the specific nuances that are related to the different characteristics of colors. If you've watched my first video about seasonal colors, you guys already know that I like to look at seasonal colors from a perspective of spectrum rather than categories. Because we as individuals are all different and we're all on a spectrum when it comes to skin tones, so finding our best color palette also means that we should be looking at the seasons on a spectrum as well. So even if 2 people fall into light spring, for example, one person might lean more towards true spring and may be able to pull off brighter and darker colors better, while the other person might lean more towards light summer and would be able to pull off cooler colors better than person number 1. So if we're looking at the wheel of seasonal colors, what I just explained means that seasons that are adjacent to each other could have an impact on your personal palette depending on where exactly you fall within the spectrum. This idea of sharing colors with the adjacent seasons is pretty easy to understand once you look at seasonal colors from a spectrum perspective. But if we're truly talking about everything being on a spectrum, not only can our personal palettes be influenced by the adjacent seasons, they can also be influenced by the seasons that are across from each other. In other words, seasons on the same side of the temperature spectrum can also have an influence on each other because these seasons share the same characteristic of temperature. So spring and autumn palettes can have an influence on each other, and summer and winter palettes are also the same in that sense. And this is the basis of the theory behind the 16 season system. And this is what I mean when I say that the 4th additional categories that are being added to the traditional 12 season system are the most nuanced, because unlike the 3 subseasons that share qualities with the adjacent seasons, the 4th subseason shares qualities with seasons that are in the same temperature group. Let me start with explaining the 4th subseason in spring, which is the soft spring. If we say that light spring is a season that can be influenced by true spring and light summer, soft spring is a season that is influenced by autumn, specifically by soft or muted autumn. So we can say that soft spring is a palette that is in between the light spring and soft autumn. And for soft springs, like the name suggests, the softness of a color is quite important. So when they wear a bright spring color or spring patterns, the colors can look quite separated and over overwhelming. And if they go too much into light spring colors that contain a lot of white, they can also look quite washed out. But if they go too far into muted or soft autumn colors, they start to look more aged and lose their vitality. So for soft springs, a balance of spring and autumn energy is really important. Spring is still the dominant season, so they still need the liveliness and the vitality. But if it's overly vibrant or loud, it kind of swallows them. And also if the colors are too light or too muted, it can make them disappear or it can age them unnecessarily. So soft springs are still lively, but in a more understated and subdued way, and they carry a certain level of weight to them. So even with bright colors, they need a hint of softness, and solids work better than patterns. But even with solid colors, rather than too bright or too light, they need a drop of gray to tone down the colors and add a bit more weight to the colors as well. If you've ever been typed as a light spring, but you feel like light spring colors can look really childish on you, but soft or muted autumn colors tend to weigh you down too much or make you look older, that might be an indication that you are a soft spring. Alright, now that we've covered soft spring, how is light autumn different? Light autumn is similar to the soft spring in that it's somewhere in between a soft autumn and a light spring, but your dominant energy is autumn. For light autumns, again, like the name suggests, lightness is quite important. So wearing too dark or muted colors can age them or weigh them down and bring out unwanted shadows, so they need a level of light colors mixed into their wardrobes, especially around the face, to bring more vitality. But even when they wear white, they're still an autumn and they're in a warm season, so a softer ivory and more earthy tones and contrast work better for them than bright whites and really striped contrast, or really artificial looking colors. So light autumns are similar to soft springs in that true soft or muted autumn colors can be too heavy for them, but the main difference is that soft springs have spring as their dominant season. So they still need the vibrance, but they just need to tone it down a level from a light spring, whereas light autumns have autumn as their dominant season, so they still need more weight than soft springs, but they need to tone it up a level from a soft autumn palette. Okay, so since soft spring and light autumn are so similar and they can overlap, how can you tell which side you're closer to? I think it really depends on how close you are to the middle of the spectrum, but here are some of the indicators that you can look out for. First, the skin or lip finish. Soft springs tend to need more glow in their skin and lips. Remember that spring is still their dominant season and they need a certain level of vitality or liveliness to them, and too matte of a skin or lip finish can make them look more tired or aged. So a soft yet subdued glow to the skin or lips is one of the indicators that can help you determine if you're a soft spring. On the other hand, glow in light autumn appears more natural when it's concentrated in specific parts of the face. I mean, granted, I think Drew Barrymore is very close to being in the middle of the spectrum between light autumn and soft spring, so she might seem like she looks good in both. But even so, I think that excess glow on her skin can be quite distracting, and she looks a lot more natural with a subdued glow in only concentrated areas of the skin. Another factor you can look at is the ability to pull off patterns. Drew Barrymore, with her dominant autumn energy, is able to wear patterns a lot better. I think that patterns in general are kind of distracting on Laura Linney, and she definitely looks more clean and elevated with solid colors. But even for Drew, too much pattern combined with darker colors is a bit overwhelming on her, so she needs to use them sparingly or combine the patterns with lighter colors to make sure they don't weigh her down too much. Now, at this point, if you're asking, well, doesn't that mean that we can just segregate the seasons more and more by using different combinations of the different characteristics? And you're right, that's really how the system expands to 20 categories and even 24 categories, right? But like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, video and in my first seasonal colors video, everything is on a spectrum. So what's actually important is knowing where your skin tone sits in the spectrum of temperature, value, and clarity, and that's going to determine where on the spectrum of seasonal colors you sit. And I know this might sound a little contradictory because I was just talking about spring and autumn energy, about patterns and glow and what that means. But the reason why I'm telling you about these extra sub-seasons is not for you to start building a rigid idea and an image in your head about what a soft spring or a light autumn is and confine yourself in that. It's more so to give you a better understanding that not all springs need to wear vibrant floral prints, and not all autumns need to wear muted tone-on-tone colors. And the main point is to actually break those stereotypes we have about seasonal colors so that we can be more flexible in applying these theories on ourselves. So these general ideas or images that you have in your head about certain seasons, those are only meant to be used as guidelines. I mean, sure, there are certain images and energies like I talked about that are associated with certain seasons, but just keep an open mind that those images are not everything that a season is, and just like how we are all different, so are our personal palettes. I hope you found today's content helpful. In the next video, I'll be talking about the 2 added sub-seasons of summer and winter in the 16 season system. So if you're interested, make sure you subscribe. I'll see you in my next video, and until then, stay unique and stay gorgeous.